everyone, this is Ella. Today we will talk about the Andes incident. If a plane crashed and the passengers survive, do you think that they can last for a few days without food? It is really a miracle in the history of an air crash. A group of 19 people survived after they persisted for so long after the crash. How is it possible? We'll keep on watching. October 12, 1972, an amateur football team from Uruguay, South America, is going to play in Santiago, the capital of Chile. At that time, the president of the club rented a Uruguayan Air Force aircraft, which was developed by Fokker FH-227, small twin turboprop passenger aircraft, and could seat a total of 40 people. The football team has only 30 people. With 10 more seats, the team chairman allowed players to bring family and friends together and can spend a holiday in Santiago. A member, Nando Parado, brings his mother and sister in the aircraft, finally puts on with 40 passengers and 5 crew members, a total of 45 people. The original flight route of the aircraft was directed flight from Uruguay's capital Montevideo to Chile's capital Santiago. The flight distance was 1,300 kilometers and the destination Santiago could be reached by crossing the Andes. Along the way, the players laughed and laughed together with their family and friends. When flying close to Andes, when it was only more than 100 kilometers away from the destination, it encountered a storm and the aircraft landed in Mendoza, Argentina. The players spent the night in Mendoza and the plane was ready to take off the next day. There's a distant direct flight route, but the mountains here are almost 7,500 meters above sea level and are very close to the climb limit of the plane. So the plane has to bypass the lower mountain range and fly south along the mountain range into an upwind channel, then cross the mountain range and enter Chile, and then go north to Santiago. This increased the flight distance by 400 kilometers, but the weather in the Andes was still bad the next day. It is expected that noon will turn out to be better because they really need to catch the game. So the first pilot passes into the headwind when the sun rises up across the mountains. The captain of this aircraft has extensive flying experience. He has crossed the Andes 29 times. This time he happened to train the co-pilot, but he once complains the aircraft was very power-driven, especially when flying in high mountain areas. The weather got worse. When they flew south to South Point preparing to cross the Andes, they entered the thick clouds and they needed to cross the Andes. Arriving in Chile Corico, the altitude of this area is 4,500 to 5,000 meters, and the aircraft must first climb to 5,500 meters as they approached Corico, and they descended again. The co-pilot told everyone to wear their air shoes. They approached the library branch, ready to fall. At that time, the aircraft has no GPS navigation devices to rely on the aircraft. The radio signal and the relative position of the ground tower determines the position of the aircraft. The airplane was above the clouds and the visibility was good, but when they started to fall, they got into the clouds and the visibility was almost zero. At this time, in order to be able to quickly descend below the clouds, the aircraft lowered its altitude several times, but this time the co-pilot made a mistake. He descended too early, and the plane had not crossed the Andes at this time. After the passengers and the cabin passed several bumps, the scene outside the window suddenly changed from the clouds to clear mountain peaks. These mountain peaks are in close proximity and about to hit. The terrible pull-up. Death warning was issued by the aircraft's ground collision alarm. This alarm has 3 levels of pull-up, which is the highest level of warning. The aircraft has detected that it is very close to the ground, and the pilot also realized that the plane has descended too early and desperately pulled the plane up. The plane were complained by lack of power and was in a bad weather at the same time. It was fully loaded. One can imagine the consequences of that time. In front of the pilot was a mountain, and the altitude of 100 meters higher than the flying height at this time. The pilot almost pulled the aircraft joystick to the limit, hoping to cross this mountain. Fortunately, the body of the aircraft just crossed the mountains, but the tail of the plane hit the mountain and directly cut off. The tail of the plane has three passengers and two crew members. The plane then crashed instantly and lost its tail. After another impact, the wings on both sides were lost. The altitude of the aircraft is 4,500 meters above sea level, and below is a huge mountain slope. The aircraft was completely out of control like a sled. All the passengers are on the verge of death. They think that they will be dying any time. Unexpectedly, after gliding a few kilometers or 2,000 meters on the slope, the plane stopped in a valley at an altitude of 3,500 meters. At this time, the plane has a total of 40 people, but only 33 individuals have survived. Two pilots of the aircraft seems the maximum impact of the co-pilots seriously injured by death and died. The first officer asked a passenger to find his pistol and kill him, but was rejected by the passenger. Parado was comatose at the moment the plane hit the ground, and his mother died, and her sister was seriously injured. The rest of the passengers from the crash came out of the plane and found that only half of the plane was severely deformed, and the radio equipment on the plane was damaged and unusable. This time, the local temperature is minus 30 degrees Celsius, and most of the players are due to go to the game only wearing thin shirts. On the other hand, they are happy for their survival, and they think that they are very close to Corico. The rescue team will find them soon. Some team members picked up the camera and took photos. Some players also smiled. In the afternoon of the crash, the Chilean side had discovered that the plane had lost contact. The rescue team was notified immediately. They sent 4 planes to search and later on did not find the plane. So it was concluded that the plane might have crashed in a sparsely populated area. Passengers thought that they suitcases at the tail of the plane in order to withstand the blizzard and then pulled out all the warm clothes to wear on their body. They believed that the rescue team would arrive, but they did not expect that night that they would freeze to death. When 3 individuals decreased the number of survivals to 30 people, and then 11 rescue teams aircraft participated in the rescue, and 3 of them flew to the area where the crashed aircraft was located. The team members used a few lipstick to scribble a red SOS on the fuselage, but because there are too few lipsticks, the SOS was not inconspicuous. When these 3 rescue planes flew to this area, many team members saw these 3 planes. They shouted desperately, thinking that they were finally saved, but when they never expected was that their plane lost its tail and wings. The fuselage is white again, and it is difficult to find the icy weather. These 3 aircraft passes them over. After a few laps around flew away, the players decided to take out the part of the trunk and put the big snow SOS, but this leads to the rear of the aircraft. There will be more cold wind blowing into the cabin, so that night they froze to death. Another 3 individuals, decreasing the number of survival to only 27 people. On this day, Parado woke up from a coma and learned of the death of her mother, and her sister also died a few days later. The rescue plane was not seen on the 3rd day. The team members realized that they had to prepare for a long wait, so they began to distribute food on the plane when there was only some wine on the plane, something like snacks and chocolates. Everyone can only get a little chocolate and a small glass of wine every day. Several players decided to go and look for scattered snow on the trunk to expect to find more food, but because the weather is too cold and there are not enough warm clothes, the plan was abandoned and they decided to wait for the rescue. On the seventh day, the first officer of the plane died, and they could not see the rescue team's plane. Some people realized that if they did not take the initiative to contact the outside world might announce that they would abandon the search and rescue operations. They were right. Actually, after 142 hours of continuous search and rescue by the search team, they thought that the plane had been covered by thick snow. Think that there's no hope and terminate the search. They hope next summer no melting snow to find the wreckage of the plane when the players saw that the co-pilot was dead. There is also a radio device at the rear of the plane, but they need to climb a mountain to find it. What even more disadvantageous is that these team members live on a seashore. Most people have never seen snow before and have no experience of high altitude. Survivors did not have medical supplies to keep on clothing and equipment, and only 3 pairs of sunglasses can prevent snow blindness. Most people will temporarily lose their eyesight if they do not wear sunglasses for a few hours in this environment. This means that only 3 people can act. Players on the radio on the plane heard a bad news. The search and rescue operation has been terminated. Their hopes dashed. They have to act now to find the radios of the tail, and the food becomes very small. This time, everyone rations. Water has also become a problem. At first, the team members ate snow directly, but they found that it did not quench their thirst at all, and they also had severe mouth ulcers. Fortunately, a famous team found airline seat. They are aluminum metals. They made a shape with these aluminum funnels and let the sand during the day melt the snow and get the water to the jar. They basically guarantees the problem of drinking. Food is gone. Some people have serious hallucinations. They begin to eat leather suitcase, even the seat foam, but find it difficult to swallow. These chemicals are not food at all. And there is a terrible idea beginning to spread in the players. If you want to survive, you must find something to eat. Then the only hope is that they can survive eating out those players who died, but determined to go to the heart must extremely really struggle. After all, these are relatives and friends, but people must eat in order to survive, especially in such a cold place. The human body needs to maintain its heat. Otherwise, it will not take a few days. It will freeze nor starve to death. The remaining people at that time made a collective decision. They must do this because that is the will of God, because God saved them and told them to do it. Some people strongly opposed it at first, but after someone said it was the will of God, they also agreed. In the end, they decided together if someone dies, also agree to devote their bodies so that other people live. Because the Bible says, "Greater love has no man than this, that a man may lay down his life for his friends." Parado protected his mother and sister, saying nothing could move. They cut the meat into pieces by hanging window glass and put them on the aircraft shell to dry. This can make it look like a normal meat. When the meat is getting less and less, they start to eat offal. That night, the players were in a cabin claiming to sleep. Suddenly broke out in a huge avalanche on the slope. The snow suddenly broke through the wall of the trunk and threw into the cabin. The entire cabin was initially filled with snow. Everyone could not move and it was difficult to breathe. Parado found a golf club and poked a hole in the body cup in order to provide ventilation. Finally, they just dug a tunnel and climbed out of the cabin. This time, another three players died, declining in the number of survival to 19. Even if there are no new deceased team members unable to provide enough food, they decided to carry out their previous plan and found the radio at the rear of the aircraft to send out a distress signal. So Parado together with the other two members put on the warmest clothes and took the food sleigh made of airplane cushions and set off. After several hours, they walked into the opposite direction of the aircraft, taxiing and finally saw the tail of the aircraft wreckage. They were pleasantly surprised to find the luggage in the tail as well as chocolate and rum, as well as extra clothes, and three of them immediately tasted this food and they found the radio at the end of the plan. However, it was found that the preliminary estimated that the battery was faulty, but the radio's battery was too heavy for them to drag back. So he decided to return to the cabin and separate the radio battery into the cockpit because that battery was smaller. What they don't know is that the radio in the cockpit of the aircraft used 115 volts AC and the tail used 24 volts AC. So, passing back and forth several times on this way did not make the radio equipped work. In the end, they gave up and they encountered a blizzard on their way back and a team member fell down, but Parado insisted on taking him back to the cabin. The Andes entered the number blizzard and kept scrapping. They brought all the clothes and food in the trunk of the aircraft, but they could not last long. They learned from co-pilot in his lifetime about where they are. This is not far from Chile's Corico. After deciding to wait for the blizzard to end, they walked to Corico for help. Blizzard blew a whole month. This time only 16 survivors were left. Parado decided to bring a team member to make a sleeping bag with the plane's thermal insulation cloth because they expected to spend one day. They've climbed this mountain before. According to the co-pilot of the plane, if they turned this mountain, they could see the town of Curico. So they set off, but the altitude here is 5,000 meters. Every step takes a lot of effort, so they stop to rest and then go. It took 3 days to reach the top, and after reaching the top, Parado appeared in front of them. Not in Curico town, but a vast expanse of mountains. They realized that the co-pilot's judgment was completely wrong. The first officer didn't figure out the exact location of the plane because the plane descended too early and turned to crash in the middle of the Andes without flying over the Andes. So Parado climbed the mountain and saw a vast expanse of mountains in front of the aircraft. This time accompanied by the team members, that they were devastated to lose the last bit of confidence to survive. But at that time, Parado said to all of them, if we're not going to do anything, other people will die while waiting for our help. So they carried the map through them. They estimated the direction of Curico and decided to turn left and continue to cross the mountains. They originally carried only 3 days of food and finally spent a full 7 days. Only after seeing the green in the distance, they realized that their judgment was correct. They walked for another 3 days and finally met a shepherd. The shepherds brought Parado and the two back to the village to provide them with real food and contacted the rescue team. The rescue team immediately announced the 14 crew members on the aircraft cabin to the world by a radio and also learned that the news through the radio. It strengthened their confidence to survive and finally rescued by the helicopter of the team. Under the guidance of Parado, the crash site was found and the rescue helicopter took a historic photo. The scene of the surviving people cheering on the side of the cabin and the media's warmth to Parado. They were treated like heroes, but within a few days, the media revealed that they survived by eating away their companions. But in the end of the day, passed a conference and described how they collectively made a contract to survive, and the family finally agreed to bury the victims at the crash site in the Andes. Then, every summer snow melt, and other surviving players were horse riding, tracking bird in a few days, going to places to visit those who sacrificed themselves. Since the people who let them live, Parado finally took over his father's business and became a businessman. In addition to the business, he also became an inspiring speaker, using his experience in the Andes to help others cope up with psychological trauma. Under no circumstances can people lose their confidence in conviction, nor they can give up at any time at the current world situation. No one knows what the future look like, but as long as we firmly believe that the world will become better, I believe that one day the pandemic can pass. Even if we don't have enough medical support, we have the faith to overcome this plague. May God bless the Philippines and all the people in the world who are suffering. See you at our next videos. Bye!